We begin the day with a reminder that a civilian is a civilian is a civilian. Those were the words on Tuesday of U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken at a U.S. Security Council meeting. He was referring to the 2 million plus Palestinians inside the Gaza Strip who are now caught in a war between Israel and the terrorist group Hamas. Blinken called on all countries to send humanitarian aid to Gaza, and he called on Hamas to stop using civilians in Gaza as human shields. He also called on Hamas to release the hostages, some 200 people who were kidnapped on October 7th. Now, 1,400 people were killed that day, making Hamas responsible for the deadliest single attack on Jews since the Holocaust. The horrors carried out that day, they are coming to light more and more. Case in point, the Israeli Kibbutz Be'eri. It was one of the first communities attacked by Hamas, and it became the scene of mass murder. DW's Max Zander reports.
Security is tight in Kibbutz Be'eri today. But at dawn on the morning of October 7th, the army was nowhere to be seen. The more than 1,000 people living here were among the first to be attacked by Hamas fighters. They roamed the kibbutz for hours, firing machine guns, grenades, rocket launchers. The Hamas-led terrorists moved from house to house over hours, killing civilians or taking them hostage. Today, this kibbutz is deserted. All what's left are burnt, destroyed houses and a community in ruins. The Israeli authorities want the world to see this and hear from people who were there.
They burned the house on them, smoke them out. And when they finally opened the doors because they couldn't breathe anymore, they decided who's to live, who's to die.
Rami Gold was part of a small group defending the kibbutz. He said they fired till they ran out of bullets.
And I got to tell you that story because 2 angels came. 2 people from reserve soldiers. I have no idea where they came from. Came to us, gave us ammunition and a cell phone so we can call our families to tell them we're okay. And we kept on going, kept on fighting till it was dark, till the army arrived.
When the fighting stopped, emergency responders looking for survivors found scenes of horror.
She was butchered open. The stomach was small children, a boy and a girl, hands tied to the back and tortured. And I'll say tortured now, yes, I'll say it. The father was without an eye. They took out his eye. The mother a breast was cut off. And while the children were brutally attacked, and they are sitting in the middle and eating the food of the holiday food, holiday meal that this family was supposed to eat.
Physical evidence of what happened at places around the country arrives here at a makeshift morgue in central Israel. These are some of the up to 200 unaccounted for people. More are still being found.
We are working day and night in shifts, trying to identify each and every one.
This is hard because people were disfigured, mutilated, burned.
We are here doing what we're doing because we think this is a holy mission. For us, identifying the last casualties and all of the civilians that got killed is so important. It's for us, we want to give them their final respect.
Families waiting to bury their dead and those who saw what happened are angry as well as bereft. At Kibbutz Be'eri, Hamas killed more than 100 people, around 10% of the community. For Rami Gold, whose sister-in-law was killed that morning, there can only be one response. Israel must completely destroy Gaza.
They made a terrible mistake. They hurt us. It was very bad. But the damage they will suffer will be even worse. And the idea is they will never think of doing that again. That's the only way we can live together, by them understanding that they can't do it to us anymore.
Emergency responder Yossi Landau, who saw the horror, says Hamas cannot be part of the future.
We went through a lot. We went through the Holocaust. We went through a lot. We'll be strong. The world is supporting us. Yes, we want the peace. It's a very important thing, the peace. Yes, but not with Hamas.
Peace seems a faraway prospect here in the ruins of Kibbutz Be'eri.
Well, we want to go to Israel now, and I'd like to bring in Tal Hartuv. She and a friend were the target of a Hamas machete attack back in 2010. Her friend was murdered. Tal was severely wounded, but she did survive. Since then, she's dedicated herself to the fight against terrorism and the calls for peace. It's good to have you with us tonight, Tal. We just saw a report, I know you were watching with us, from the site of the massacre at Kibbutz Be'eri. I mean, that's only one of the atrocities committed by Hamas that day. How wounded is the Israeli nation at this moment?
Well, first of all, Brent, I want to thank you for having me on your show, and also to extend my gratitude and the gratitude of another 9 million Israelis, because you're one of the only TV channels now who are still calling Hamas terrorists and are still covering actually what's happening in Israel rather than the focus being entirely upon Gaza. How wounded are we? I'll tell you how wounded we are. We are a nation traumatized, and I mean, your nation knows very well. Germany knows very well. Germany is one of our greatest allies today. With that, it's no secret that this is the biggest atrocity poured about on Jewish people since the Holocaust. So we're still shuddering from this. We haven't even located all our where everybody is. We still have 40 people missing. Now, either they're ashes in some field in Israel or they're also in Gaza. We still have babies, toddlers, children, women and men taken as hostage. We haven't yet identified all the bodies to bury our dead. We are a traumatized nation. And I'll tell you something, Brent, something else. It's like an earthquake, right? And you have the aftershocks. What are the aftershocks? It's like I indicated a little bit earlier. The aftershock is this, that mainstream Western media, yourselves exempt, of course, but most Western media are calling Hamas militants, or as the BBC says, they call them organizers. And it's almost like even the United Nations Secretary General today made an absolutely outrageous speech that responded, with our ambassador to the UN responded that he should be fired immediately, he should resign, because he said this, he said, these atrocities don't happen in a vacuum, meaning whatever your politics are, somehow the beheading of babies and the raping of dead corpses is legitimized because of perpetual victimhood from the Palestinian people.
Is that what you felt like?
Let me tell you something else, and then I'll answer anything. But my words are precious. I went through so much, and I've got a lot to say. Okay. I want to do this. I was stabbed 13 times with a machete. All right. I watched my Christian friend hacked to death because their executioners thought she was Jewish. I lost my health. I lost my friend. I lost the dignity to provide for myself, sleep, mundane, everything. But I didn't take out my frustrations, pounce on Arabs, tie them up and hack them to death. This is inexcusable. People are setting the bar so low for the Palestinians, and it's inexcusable. And I and 9 million other Israelis are absolutely raging mad about this.
I know you're angry, but I also know that you've spent a part of your life working to bridge the gaps between Israelis and Palestinians. That said, what is your reaction to the fact that no Palestinian leaders have found it in themselves to condemn the Hamas atrocities?
Well, I'm not really surprised, and thank you for reminding your viewers, because I always try to remember to say that it was a Muslim surgeon who saved my life. I probably have more Palestinian friends than most Israelis I know. It's just because I managed to differentiate between evil and good after the attack. I'm not surprised at all that no Palestinian leaders have refuted or condemned this. I mean, for years, this is a sore point, and I've been speaking around the world about this. For years, the European governments and the American government have been funding the Palestinian Authority with billions of euros. And by the way, the attacks on October the 7th weren't just Hamas. there were factions of the PLO who also joined that. And the PLO come under the auspices of Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority. And Mahmoud Abbas takes those European euros and he is rewarding the people who attacked me and murdered my friend with a monthly salary while they're in prison. So if he's going to incite and give people incentive to murder, we shouldn't be surprised that he's not going to condemn it.
I have to say, we don't have a way of verifying what you're saying there about where the money goes. I just want to make that clear. Do you understand, though, the concerns that are being expressed to Israel from its friends about the scale of Israel's response in Gaza?
No, absolutely not. And I tell you why, because people always say we want a proportion. You need to respond proportionately. And I say personally, heaven forbid that we would respond proportionately, because that would mean we would have to behead exact same amount of babies. We would have to rape the exact same amount of women. We would have to burn the exact same amount of Palestinian families sitting peacefully in their homes. We do not want a proportionate response. We need a disproportionate response. And therefore, Israel is targeting the northern part of Gaza at the moment. We have attack bomb buildings. We've distributed leaflets in Arabic saying go south. We've extended our deadline it's 10 days since we gave the warning. People are having plenty of time to cross those few miles into the south. And it's very interesting. It's only recently that Egypt even bothered to open the borders to humanitarian aid. One more thing, Brent, we have a humanitarian crisis here. We have over 100,000 people who have had to leave their homes from the north and the south. They're living in the hotels. They're living in my backyard. They're living everywhere. No one's talking about the humanitarian aid corridor that's coming to Israel. Let's keep it in proportion. Let's keep it targeted. Who started this with their savagery?
So what do you say then to the words from the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken? He visited Israel immediately after these attacks. And he said that the Middle East has a choice, the hate, the nihilism offered by Hamas, or the people working together for peace and stability. Is that, I mean, I can sense the anger that you're carrying right now. I mean, is even thinking about peace right now, is that possible?
No, absolutely not. And people say, oh, the innocent Gazan civilians. Of course there are innocent civilians. But we see footage now of hundreds of innocent civilians who followed these savages into my kibbutzim, into our kibbutzes, looting dead bodies. We hear mobile phone calls recorded by these terrorists calling their families from Jewish phones. And the parents are egging them on. One savage is saying, oh, I murdered 10 people with my own hands. And the mum and dad, the innocent civilians, are saying, yay. And also, I got to remind you, of course, there are innocent civilians. But let's not forget the thousands of innocent Gazan civilians who threw street parties on 9/11. These same thousands of innocent Gazan civilians who dish out candy every time a Jewish person is murdered. I have Palestinian friends. I have a friend or two in Gaza, right? They've done nothing wrong. My heart breaks for them. It really does. But my heart breaks for my own people. And you're talking about, innocent civilians. These people are getting a carte blanche for also allowing, squandering the hundreds of thousands of humanitarian aid that Israel has been given to Gaza for the last decade or so.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you before
the narrative. These people never did anything wrong. Of course there can't be peace with Hamas. And these people voted Hamas in, by the way. Well,
before we run out of time, let me just ask you then, what has to happen for peace to be achieved, in your opinion? I mean, I know you agree with what you're hearing from Benjamin Netanyahu, that Hamas has to be destroyed. But do you think that's the only thing that has to happen before you can have peace with the Palestinians?
It's a very good question. Listen, after the attack a few years ago, I contacted a young Palestinian man and I said, let's make the world a better place. What do you want to do? And we talked and we set up a little after-school club in a refugee camp, teaching Palestinian children English and computer skills so they could better their lives. Now, of course, he can never say that because his own people would murder him for having normalizations with a Jew. All right, so what needs to happen? First of all, regarding Europe and America, you need to completely withdraw any funding to the Palestinian Authority because they are stealing money from their own people. The squander and poverty you see in Gaza is because their own people, their own leadership have stolen that. Get rid of that leadership. Let's look for fresh leadership. All right. And let's not be all kind of, how do you say, starry eye and rainbow, that all we need is flowers and unicorns. These people, a lot of these people have been fed hatred in United Nations UNRWA schools in Gaza, where the UNRWA curriculum specifically teaches young Palestinian children to hate Jews. And I believe there should be an international inquiry to the likes of UNRWA and certainly now in the United Nations following this outrageous justification of the slaughter of my people. The problem is not with Israel. The problem is with these big organizations and the money that is streaming into the Palestinian and the Palestinian Authority.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. Tal Hartuv, we appreciate you sharing your thoughts and your passion with our viewers tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent. We're hurting over here. Thank you for supporting Israel.
On Monday, Israel's First Lady, Michelle Herzog, met with some of the families of the victims and the hostages, and she told DW about her concerns.
I don't really think we grasp the gravity of the entire situation. We're not used to such numbers, to such a magnitude, and definitely not to the sights that we've all seen. And I think, you know, the wounds, the physical wounds can heal, but the soul will take much longer time. And that is why this is an issue I've been dealing with. The issue of mental health and helping people in need is something I've been doing in regular life, in pre-war times. And it is something that comes much more seriously into the Israeli being.
Well, Dr. Ruth Schidlo is a clinical psychologist and trauma therapist. She joins us from Tel Aviv in Israel. Welcome to DW, Doctor. Do you share the First Lady's view that people probably don't grasp the magnitude of the health issues to come?
Yes, I totally agree. I don't think anyone can even begin to imagine how long it will take all of us and the whole world, I suppose, to get out of this horrific situation where very small children and infants are growing into this horrible world with all of these events. And we need to find ways of counterbalancing all of the horrific events and helping people realize that at least for the moment, some of them are relatively safe, and to focus also on the resources that they may have available or can be developed to help them deal with this horrific trauma.
And what sort of mental health issues are people, is the country, is society likely to face if these traumas, if there is no intervention?
Well, without immediate stabilization for those who may need it, and there are many, and also other interventions that are like short-term interventions close by to the events that happen, without that kind of focused intervention, there is, of course, the likelihood of PTSD being very prevalent, even more than it is today with everything else that has been going on over the years. So early intervention is like crucial. It's key to somehow decrease the likelihood of PTSD for anyone who is involved.
And as far as you can tell, is that early intervention being provided?
Well, to some extent, yes, it is. There are specialists who work in this area. But of course, there is such a widespread need that I think the government will need to allocate a lot of resources to make possible the ongoing care that people need, whether they're very young children, children of all ages, their parents, professionals in the field,
Right.
first responders, etc.
And have you yourself worked with people directly affected by these attacks?
Yes, I am in touch. I am currently working with 2 foreign students who were here in one of the kibbutzim on the massacre of October the 7th, where they were, rudely awakened from what they were doing at the time. It was early morning, and they were attacked like 3 different times in 3 different waves by terrorists on their kibbutz. Many of them died in front of the friends who survived to tell the tale. Some of them were injured. Some of them may be still in hospital. They really were totally unprepared for anything like that, as any of us were. I mean, who would expect on a Sabbath morning and holiday to have hundreds of terrorists coming into one's homes and attacking the whole neighborhood, the whole kibbutz, the whole agricultural community? This is like a horrible nightmare that no one would want to have. And people are dealing as best they can. And it's very, very hard. And it's important to focus on the fact that there are moments of relative safety, and that the event is over for now, and that they survived and they did the best they could under the circumstances.
Right.
So we have to focus on themes of danger and of responsibility and of guilt, and deal with these important issues.
We thank you for talking us through that so clearly. Clinical psychologist Dr. Ruth Schidlo in Tel Aviv.
Thank you for having me.
Shiri Daniels is a psychologist and the executive director of counselling at Iran. That's an Israeli organisation for emotional first aid. Welcome to DW, Dr. Daniels. We really appreciate you joining us at such a very difficult time. Your organisation has a telephone hotline and an online chat service. Can you give us a sense of how this crisis is affecting your organisation's work?
Well, we in Iran are going through extremely difficult and challenging days in the front lines of national emotional support. All our 1,600 volunteers with endless dedication already received over 27,000 distress calls. It's a rise of about 500%. Now, on Saturday, with the outbreak of the war, we were one of the first organizations to administer help in real time. We were also amongst the first force to go into the emotional battle to support the shocked Israeli society. And we have 50 years of experience, but we have never known something of this scale of devastation. A nightmare that goes beyond anything we could have imagined. Our volunteers will never forget the screams of young adults from the party in Re'im who called us from the fields where they hid, pleading to be rescued. We won't forget the frightened whispers of mothers telling us that terrorists are shooting at their bombshell. And we can't forget pleading calls under live fire. It's something we never experienced.
So you're suggesting, or you're making clear that you were getting calls as these atrocities were happening. I wanted to ask you, who has been reaching out to you? I presume it's also people in the aftermath of what happened, trying to cope with what has happened. What kind of people are calling you?
Well, exactly. We get calls from kids as young as 6-year-olds, teenagers, soldiers, the military, students, as well as the elderly. We see a lot of uncertainty, fear, anxiety, loss and grief, calls that really are heartbreaking. Some of them call us and contact us through the chat or WhatsApp while we hear the sirens in the background. It's non-stop.
Can you tell us what emotional first aid entails in these situations? How do you actually help?
Well, normally we live under the illusion that nothing bad can happen to us, and disaster shatters the illusion that we are in control. And suddenly we realize that what has been can no longer be. That means that the way we view ourselves, others, and the world we live in changes after such an event. The sense of continuity in our life is disrupted. So when we give emotional first aid via telephone or online, we first of all listen. We let people tell their story and we validate their emotions. Sometimes we help them practice skills of calming down, of mindfulness, breathing techniques. And we remind them about their resilience and their strength. Sometimes our main job is to keep sight of the hope which they no longer see, and help them understand that we are resilient and we can adapt and we can get through this together. That's why volunteering and finding solidarity is so important now around the world. That will help us all heal our broken hearts and let some light come into the picture.
Dr. Shiri Daniels from the Emotional First Aid Group Iran. Thank you so much for your time and helping us understand more the work that you are doing. Thank you.